Okay, where is it? There we go. Okay. All right. See if anybody comes. Well, the ticking of the clock can be heard. Aha, here we go. Terrence, Ben, very good. So good to meet you. I'll say hello to everybody. And I wonder if you can hear the ticking of the clock. Different clock. This is this clock right here. It's an old schoolhouse clock. It's a genuine antique. It's been well over 100 years since it was built. It was a schoolhouse clock in Minoa, New York. And when Uncle Bob up sticks and moved west, he took it with him. So that was about 1920, maybe 1925. And he had the clock ever since. And when he died, it passed to my father. And when I was mentioning at the time, you know, what do I want from the family home when he dies? And I'm going, I don't really want anything, but I would like that clock. He actually came here several years before he died and gave me the clock in person. And I think I have had to take it apart and clean it once. I had a little trouble with it. It just needed to be cleaned. The way you clean a clock, the way I clean a clock, I don't know about official ways, but this is from Home Depot. It's actually denatured alcohol. And I have enough of it. This stuff is dirt cheap. And it is a nice, gentle solvent. Gets all the oil out without doing any harm to the components. And then you take a toothpick and a tiny drop of oil, and you put them in just certain spots. You don't spray WD-40 over it, that's for sure. That'll gunk up a clock in a hurry. Now you just a little bit of oil on the pivot points, and that will bring that clock back. And right now it's operating beautifully. The other clock that I had, it ceased working because it needs cleaning, and that's what that gallon of alcohol is for. You know, it's interesting. We're just waiting for people to gather. That gallon of denatured alcohol is ethanol, pure ethanol, plus a poison added to it. And the poison has the same boiling point as the alcohol, so you can't distill it out. And so it can be used for commercial purposes like washing and cleaning and stuff like that, or as fuel, like for camp stoves. Certain camp stoves, not the Coleman, they take white gas. However, that ethanol that went to make that probably came from petroleum sources. It's exactly the same methanol you'd find in vodka or something like that. I mean, it without the poison, of course. And so you think about it, they'll sell you this bottle of Smirnoff for a bunch of money. And whereas actually alcohol can be made commercially in very large volumes for dirt cheap. I guess at times they've used it for rocket fuel and stuff like that. The old custom of sprinkling a little pepper into your vodka and waiting for it to settle to the bottom is that a lot of the vodka in the USSR is taken from petroleum refineries. They distill out the alcohol. Not distill, what do they call it? Anyway, it's a still. They take the alcohol out and turn right around and package it as vodka. And so since it is an impure, it's not 100%, the idea of the pepper is that the other petroleum artifacts will gather around the pepper and sink to the bottom. I have no idea if there's any truth at all to whether that works, but it's where the tradition came from. All of the distilleries around the U.S., for example, every so often an unmarked tanker truck will pull up and say, could you take this off our hands, please? And they get the gift of this very nearly pure alcohol. Now, to make a proper whiskey, and so it's got to be aged and all that sort of thing. I have no idea. I don't drink, so I don't know what any of this stuff tastes like. But it is available by distilling almost anything organic. You can do it from grass, you can do it from leaves, you can do it from grain, you can do whatever you want. And that imparts a little tiny flavor that does not, well, it survived the distilling process to come through. It's quite an art, I guess. In early American history, farmers would, that grain, and the cheapest way to ship it and get the most profit was to distill it to alcohol, usually whiskey, and ship that back east because it took a much smaller volume and had a much higher price. Of course, then when the railroads went in and stuff, they did different ways. Okie doke, let's see. Hello everyone, I'm Dave Casler, amateur radio call sign KE0OG, here with this week's live stream on YouTube, and my channel is Ask Dave, and I also write the Ask Dave column for QST, which reminds me they want my, I think it's the December column. They'd like that a little early because the guy's going on vacation over Thanksgiving. No, that'd be the January column because the QST comes out digitally somewhere around the 8th of the month for the following month. And then your print copies won't arrive until about 2 weeks later. And I have to therefore, there is a companion video, by the way, to all of these columns. And if you are looking at Ask Dave on the screen. You're reading the electronic copy. Up at the top, there's a URL for the playlist. Unfortunately, for headlines, QST uses Helvetica. And a capital I, a 1, and a lowercase l look a lot alike. They're almost identical. And the very last character is one of those vertical slashes. So you may have to experiment. I think it's a 1, but I'm not sure. It's best to just click on it. Or another thing you can do is copy that and put it into a Word document and change it to courier type. And that will tell you instantly whether it's a 1, an I, or a lowercase l. So you'll be in good shape there. Okay, let's see what we've got going here. Now, let me make this caveat. The purpose of this live stream is for Augies to gather together, meet each other, chat a little bit, and then you can you can also ask questions. I will strive to answer your question. Sometimes they take a little research, and sometimes somebody else knows the answer better than I do. So please, also, there is a delay, sometimes a fairly significant, like couple-minute delay, between when you put up your comment and when other people can see it. So I know that there's a significant, nearly 1 minute delay between the time I say something, and I'm looking at real time here, and when it shows up over here, having made its path all the way back to the control panel for the live stream. So I have checked the audio. I'm using this. This is the Rode wireless mic. And I got the one that's actually got 3 spaces in here. This one over here is for the mic I'm wearing. This one over here is for the receiver. And this is another mic. And you can have the system combine them, or you can record them separately, which is what we do, because usually one person is a little more soft-spoken than another, and you can tweak that easily if the 2 audio streams are separated. We process all the audio in Audacity, and it is what we usually do is compress it and then bring it, and the end result of the compression is to bring the thing up to a maximum level so that all the videos have the same loudness and so on. One of the reasons that we do the compression is that it's a bad habit of mine, but it's one I've got nonetheless. I'll start a sentence louder than I finish it. My voice tends to go down toward the end of the sentence, and then the next sentence is a little louder. I discovered this when I tried, well, actually succeeded in narrating an audiobook. And I discovered that problem and discovered that with suitable settings on the compression, I could even it out. And it sounded okay. I mean, after all, there's no need for the audiobook to be a hi-fi representation of my voice, just as long as it's a hi-fi of something. I mean, none of the readers of the audiobook know who I am. They haven't heard me. Plus, my voice has changed an awful lot over the last 10 years. I used to be a strong bass in the church choir, but not anymore. I'm not strong bass, I'm a weak bass. The Mormon Church is in the process of developing a new hymnal, and they have done some interesting things. They're going to, it used to, the old hymnal, 1985 hymnal, was designed around the then existing worship services. So you had songs for the main sacrament meeting, you had songs for Sunday school, you had songs to sing in various activities and so on. And there were only like 340 songs, hymns. They want them to be called hymns, but they're hymns, they're anthems, they're, you know, all kinds of things. And another thing that they did was they lowered the pitch of many of the hymns by half a step. And that was hard for me as an organist because I can't play all the hymns and I don't sight read. It takes me a long time to learn a hymn. So what I do is I take the old hymn book, the 1948 hymn book, and pop it open in front of the organ and then reach over and you can just go click and it's down a half a note. And you can go down half an octave and up half an octave. And I, you know, come down. The thing I have to do is remember to set it back when I'm done for the hymns where they haven't changed the key. There are a few people in the congregation who sight read and who have perfect pitch. So I don't quite have perfect pitch, but I can tell a lot of times when funny things are going on. Interesting aside, there was a guy who was going to sing a song as a solo, and they had to bring the organ down 4 full steps to get it in his range. He's big bass. And so they did that, and then the organist forgot to put it back up. And so the sacrament, or the closing hymn, was kind of way down in the gravelly part. Kind of funny. Anyway, they're coming out with a new hymn book with a different philosophy. They're adding a lot more hymns. And as they choose which hymns are going to be added to the hymn book, they have been releasing the sheet music for them and encouraging us to get to know them. They've added several hymns in there that are classic Protestant hymns, and they're perfectly wonderful hymns. They just didn't fit with what Mormons had been singing. So now they're adding them back in, which I think is a nod to all the people that, you know, think about it. When I went on my mission, there were 1.25 million members of the church. Well, now there's like 18 million. So most of the members of the church have joined since I went on a mission. And that means that, you know, they're more familiar with their favorite hymns. So a lot of those hymns are being brought into the hymn book, I think including Amazing Grace, which is one of the most beautiful hymns on earth. Anyway, okay, we're up to 7 o'clock. Let's take a look. This is Terrence, 2 Echo Zero India Papa Kilo from the UK. Says, hi Dave, hope all is well with you. Ben Hur CBs and Trucker Tips. Sounds like a channel. Says, best wishes, Dave. And Bill Meyer, KA8GIM, says, hi Dave and all Augies. Bill Myers also says, no audio, Dave. Well, I think I've got audio. It shows I've got audio. Okay, Robert Morris, howdy Dave, W5WSS. Robert, welcome. Good to have you here. Bill Myers, never mind, that was my fault. No problem at all. No fault at all, just we need to, if you set something wrong, just change the setting. You know, there's no moral value attached to having the volume too low. So no faults, just something to change. Thanks, Bill. Harry Rundle. Hi, Dave from rainy Middle River, Maryland. From AC3EK, we need the rain. So do we. Please send some our way. It was so dark here today. I thought we were going to get a good soaking. We got a total of 0.05 of an inch of rain. Was all we got. We are in super drought. You go up to Junction and they call that extreme drought up there, which is the highest on the scale. It's very nearly that here, and I'm worried about the trees. There are pine beetles, and the way they work is mama comes and punches a hole inside the bark and lays the eggs in there, and then the larvae eat the layer of the tree that brings the moisture up to the top limbs, and they'll ring a tree in very little time, which of course kills it. Now the way the pinyon pines fight back against that is that they push sap at the beetles. Now the problem is with drought like this, that wood inside those trees is actually drier than ordinary cut lumber. And so they have no sap to push at the beetles, and that's when the beetles can ring the trees. It seems weird because you've got this symbiotic relationship. Beetles need food, pines provide it. If the beetles kill all the pines, there's not going to be any more beetles. But so far, knock on wood, we haven't lost any trees to it on our lot. There's one on the road up here that we lost that needs to be cut down, otherwise it's a fire hazard. There are several different kinds of pines around here. Over on Log Hill, where they get up to 8,000 feet, there are some ponderosas, which are tall. Pinyon pines are desert pines. The only reason they can live here is we're at 7,000 feet. If we were any lower, it would be desert. Most of the valley here that hasn't been turned to agriculture is desert. Okay, let's see. Ben-Hur CBs and trucker tips. My question, Dave, is in trucks. They have two opposing antennas. Can I use an Antron 99 at a serial horizontal connected? The two opposing antennas, I believe, are connected in parallel. And it creates a signal that goes behind you and in front of you, which is very good. Just a second. Where's this thing? Push the mute button for a second. Not finding the mute button. There it is. Yeah, well, I guess it's all going out. It looks like it is. I know when I cough, it can be quite loud in the mic. We've got these mics set up. They are not, there's no automatic volume control. So they record loud as loud and quiet as quiet. And we do that for maximum fidelity. If you have an automatic gain control, like some tape recorders and so on, the problem is that you'll hear the audio. They're usually fast attack. And then if you stop saying anything, it'll bring the volume up and up and up to where the background becomes a roar. And then as soon as somebody says something, it comes back down. Well, I hate that. So these are set, if there's a quiet background, it's quiet. So anyway, let's see here. Bill Myers has, let's see. Anyway, the way those CB antennas are set up, you've got the interstate ahead of you and the interstate behind you, so they're good for that. If you anti-phase them, they'll go out to the sides. Now, you can, if you want, I believe they use a 3/8 connection where you screw that in. You can put a ham stick in there and be on any band. So that's something you can do. You'd have to add another coax to that and reroute it into the cab, but it can be done. Or you can get a mag mount with that 3/8 thread in it and put that in the middle of the cab. And of course you've got that truck behind you, which acts as a big reflector. But anyway, it's something you can look at. I hope that helps a little bit. Antron 99. Let me look up the Antron. I don't know what that is. It's a CB antenna. Okay. That's why I hadn't heard of it. Okay. There are different companies make different things, you know. Some tend to specialize in CB, some specialize in ham radio. And a few manufacturers provide antennas for both. Okay, Barry Theodore. Hi, Dave. Is the length of the feed coax important? The short answer is no. The longer answer is if the feed line is long, you want to go to a thicker coax so you get less loss, because otherwise you're just heating up the coax. So if you're more than 80, 100 feet away from the house, I'd go with RG213 or LMR 400, something like that, rather than RG8X. For HF, RG8X will generally do pretty good. Now, does the length of it matter from a matching point of view? No. Now, coax, the length of the coax will make it a phase changer. It will change the phase. In other words, if you're going up at the transmitter, you might still be coming down at the other end, you know, and you do a little bit of this. But SWR does not care about the phase, and neither does your antenna. So it's fine. Now, if your antenna is badly out of tune, like trying to drive a 40-meter antenna for 80, it would be badly out of tune. Yes, the length of the coax becomes important. There is a piece of software called Transmission Line for Windows, and it comes with the extra digital files that come with the antenna book, and that will tell you everything you want to know about that coax. And if you have the length of the coax, you can figure out the electrical length of the coax, because light travels slower in coax than it does on an open wire. And then you can take that into account. You can actually create matching stubs. So you have your normal 50 ohm coax coming up to 75 ohm matching stub, which you can make from RG6, which is dirt cheap coax. And then your antenna. And now that's getting into some of the stuff that's in the antenna book, in the extra class syllabus, and so on. But it can be done. Normally, I would recommend that you get your antenna matched as best you can, and then add the coax. And like I said, longer piece of coax. Now, this is important. If you have an unrealistically low SWR, remember it measures the ratio of the return signal and the signal that went out. So very low, well, let's see, signal, I can't remember. If there's loss in the cable, it will tend to make the SWR look better than it really is. This becomes particularly important at VHF and UHF because losses in cables can be quite high. And if you have an antenna on the roof or out on top of your tower or on a mast or something like that, you've got to take into account the length of the coax, because you could be losing literally half of your signal heating the coax. Now the problem is, yeah, fine, turn it up to high power, but it does the same on the return path. You lose 3 dB of signal to noise ratio if you've got 3 dB loss. That's half your signal. Now you'll only notice that in marginal signals, but it can happen. Okay, a little kerosene rag left inside the clock keeps the gears lubricated. That's interesting, Barry. Thank you. I'll have to look into that. I don't want the room to smell of kerosene, but that would be interesting. If you get pure kerosene, it's pretty odorless, but it's hard to get pure kerosene. I picked some up. I was at an Amish store in Ohio. After one particular Dayton trip, instead of heading back home, we headed up to, and I can't remember the name of this little town, but there's a lot of Amish around there. And this store, Lehman's with an apostrophe, Lehman's. And they sell like super pure kerosene so that you can run your kerosene lamps. Remember, the Amish have this thing about electricity. So they will use those lamps, and the purified kerosene keeps the lamps from smelling like kerosene. I know jet fuel, JP4, or JP1, whichever you like, tend to be mostly kerosene. And it used to be, it was pennies a gallon. And then and it was an incidental cost. But when they had the oil price hike back in the 70s, thanks to a couple of people in office who kind of engineered that, in order to get more money to the Shah of Iran, they engineered a price rise. Unfortunately, it hit the airlines too. So they'll pay a couple dollars a gallon for kerosene, and now fuel costs become extremely important in the airline's bottom line, which is why they went from 4-engine to 2-engine, because the 2-engine aircraft, and those engines are gigantic, actually more fuel efficient. Fuel efficiency is everything in a transport aircraft. Okay, so let's get on to the next one. Hello, Bill Myers. And he sends $10, and he says, thanks for all of the amateur radio inspiration, advice, tips, and etc. over the years. Well, Bill, thank you very much. He adds $10 to the chat revenue, and I appreciate that enormously, because I'm going to 3 hamventions in the period of the next couple months. The first one is Duke City. That's Albuquerque. And that's this month, in a couple weeks. And I will be speaking there. I'm doing a presentation on how you can use Whisper to determine antenna patterns and stuff like that. They've also asked me to re-present the presentation that I gave to a standing room only crowd last year about electromagnetic, high altitude electromagnetic pulse. So I'm going to present that again. And then I'm going to Pacificon, which is out in San Ramon, California, and I will be presenting there. And then coming straight back from that, there's one in Grand Junction, which is the Rocky Mountain Area ARRL convention. The Pacificon is the equivalent for the Bay Area district of the ARRL. It's a big ham fest. And so I'm hoping to have a good time at all 3 of them. And again, if you see me there, please stop. stop me and shake my hand. Tell me who you are. Let's exchange selfies. And I'd love to get pictures of your station so that we can, share them here if you want to. Okay, Medicore. Thanks for all you do, Dave. You're a great resource for all of us, from Doug N4CQD. Chuck Schreiber, good evening, Dave, and hello to all Augies N5KVO from the hill country of South Texas. I hope all that flooding has abated and appropriate things are being done for flash flood warning. I remember as a teenager, I spent a lot of time in the California desert, in the Mojave Desert. And I was told from a very early age, one, don't put your hands where you can't see them because a rattlesnake might be able to see them. Second, don't stay in these dry gullies for very long. If there's any rain around, don't even go into them. Because the next thing you know, a wall of water can be coming down there and you will not survive it. The reason for that is because as the water washes down, it cleans the gully. So you get quite a few feet thick of sticks and brambles and trees and junipers and all of this kind of stuff, and wham, that'll hit you right in the face. And you're not going to survive that. So I was always told, stay out of the gullies. Don't ever pitch a tent in a gully. Get up on higher ground, because you can't outrun a flash flood either. You have to climb out of the gully somehow. And then if the thing washes at the sides of the gully, you better be continuing to climb. So those are dangers out in the desert. Let's see. Glenn Martin, N0QFT, hello from far west Missouri area. 72 degrees Fahrenheit, 67% relative humidity. Sounds like pretty pleasant. We currently have 58 outside and 80 here. The weather has broken, usually does in mid-August. And so we're starting to get some cooler days, and then we'll start to have some really chilly nights. Buddy Khan, KE5ILH, greetings. Can you use a split bolt for vertical antenna radial wires? Yes, absolutely. You get a long one, put all the wires up in there, thread it through something, and then turn that down tight, and it will push all those copper wires together. Yes, that will work. Okay. Ralph Leland, hi Dave and everyone, K4TA in Fork Union, Virginia. Hello, Ralph. Huckleberry, thoughts on one element quad laid flat. You've got a horizontal loop. I think that's what you're describing. Now, if you feed at a corner point or something like that, it can be a multiband antenna. Like if you make it 130 to 264 feet around, full wavelength, it'll be resonant on 80, resonant-ish on 80, resonant-ish on 40, and so on up. And with a wide range tuner, you can feed that. Now the problem is on 80 meters, it goes straight up, 40 meters also. Great NVIS antenna. Now, once you get up to like 20, it's starting to get high enough to be a real antenna, except it's so long compared to, the wavelength, 20 meters, that you get a very, very strange pattern out of it. And the same as you go up in frequency. Really weird patterns. Sometimes it's to your advantage, other times they're nulls. There's nulls all over the place. But can it work? Yes, absolutely. Natalie Batista, my Dave and Augie's beautiful day today in Davenport, 65 and clear. Let's see, this is Glenn Martin. Alcohols have an OH group. Ethanol is CH3CH2OH. Methanol is CH3OH and very toxic. Fermentations of sugars by yeast generally is a common method for producing ethanol or drinking alcohol. Yeah. Now the poison they add, I mean, it's serious poison. They did this during the Prohibition, when people would just go buy alcohol from the hardware store. So they denatured it with this poison. The poison, if you drink enough, it will kill you. If you don't drink quite enough to kill you, it will likely make you go blind. It's stuff to stay totally away from. And even if you're a raging alcoholic desperate for drink, don't ever touch that stuff. It's going to be the end of everything right there. And they poison it so that you can use it, like I'm going to use it to clean this clock. Or the clock in the other room. I also need to clean my cuckoo clock. It's been years since I've done that, and it's just sitting there silent because it drives Loretta crazy to have 3 clocks ticking in one room, because we've got a grandfather clock in there too. And I have taken that out and cleaned that too. Okay. Robert Morris. Huck one wavelength loop would radiate a majority of its radiation through its middle broadside to the wire, hence epicenter parallel to the ground is NVIS toward the zenith. Yes. Very well put. And see, Lucky, hi Dave, ever worked on an LDG tuner Z100? This is from KG0AF. And no, I have not. I've never had a tuner like that. Now, I've been sent a tuner from the company Guzizu. And it's in my list of things to test. I mean, they're stacked up out here. I've got so many things to test. This is made from an open source project, okay? And it's supposedly an auto tuner for up to 100 watts. I will find out if that is true. I will also try to figure out what its limits are, because I don't know if it's wide range or not. You can do it automatic or manual, and if you there's a reset and a little tune button here. If you want it to tune, just push that in and it will tune. I mean, it's cute, small. So, like I said, it's made from an open source project, so a lot of companies make it. Runs on 12 volts. So, we'll see how it works. Okay, let's see. Terence from the UK. I think he's in London. I'm not sure. Terence, 2 Echo 0 Indy Papa Kilo. I was one of your patron members, but had to cancel it because when I was hacked, he got into nearly all my accounts. Anyway, that said, tonight I just joined the channel. Well, thank you very much. And we try and keep track of people who have joined either on YouTube or through PayPal, particularly on Patreon. The entry level is $2 a month. And we've got this thing going where if you become a new patron or member or whatever, for at least $2 a month, we will send you a genuine U.S. currency $2 bill. And it's a shame that they stuck Thomas Jefferson on this, because he was one of the major founding fathers. We live in what can be well described as a Jeffersonian democracy. And these are legal tender. You hardly ever see them. Because people tend to do what I do with them. If I get a $2 bill, I save it. But I'm going to have to go down to the bank and get a bunch of these so that we can send these. This is nice and crisp, and it's got a nice picture here on the back of the Declaration of Independence being signed in 1776. It's one of these murals where everybody's face appears, but it gets really tiny as you go toward the back. But it's $2 bill, the real one. Anyway, we'll send you one that first month. Okay, so when you sign up for that, please stick your call sign somewhere. Either like if you put in your last name, then put in your first name and call sign or something like that, just so we get your call sign, because then we can look up your address and send it to you. Okay, let's see. I'm very sorry about the hack. The problem with my hacking is people who wanted to destroy the website. And they did a pretty good job of it a couple times. In fact, it's never really recovered. However, I came to notice since I used WordPress as my website building approach, you can find not only dcasler.com, but you can go to dcasler.wordpress.com. And it's actually a much more complete copy of my site than what I have up on the site, because the first time it was hacked, we recovered fairly easily from this. Some idiot managed to hack in and insert a bunch of graphics and text that was a fundraising plea for a terrorist group. I wish I had kept that graphic, because it was the coolest graphic I'd seen in a long, long time. But it turned out they put it all in the title block. So all we had to do was wipe that clean and we were okay. Now the next hack was a lot worse, where people not only took over my site and changed it so that it was a running advertisement for cryptocurrency. And you couldn't stop it, you couldn't get into it or anything. And then I've switched providers. Well, we got switched for me. Anyway, I personally think it was an inside job, because I was changing complex passwords to access everything about the site. But of course, they on their end could go in directly. And that's why I think it was an inside job. And as part of that last one, they hijacked my email address with Google. But I got with Google, actually talked to real live human beings there, and they walked me through the recovery process. And shouldn't I have changed my email at that time? Not really. It's the only email I really make public. Casler28@gmail.com comes straight to me. All the other ones are forwarded to me. And of course, if you send it to askdave@arrl.org, not .net, but .org, then that gets forwarded straight to me. And the nice thing about email is that you can attach things. And what I look for, please, if you got a question about an antenna, send me a picture. Send me the link to the antenna so I can look it up. Sometimes I've had to ask for the pictures and stuff like that, because you've got it pictured in your mind, but I don't. So help me with that. And maybe I can provide you a question. And maybe not. I don't know. Oh, and I should mention to you that there is a Google group now open for this channel. Discord was expensive. And all that sort of stuff. Google groups are free. So I signed up for a Google group. if you are a subscriber and have opted for notifications, I sent an email. I'll show you what that looks like. Here. Let's see, I want screen. And we're going to go to my channel. That would be YouTube D. Casler. YouTube at Dave Casler. Okay, here we go. This is my main channel right here. Okay, we've got the live stream going on right now. Now, see, I can do videos. Those are long form videos, shorts. There's a whole bunch of shorts. Okay, live. There are live streams, including this one right now. And skip. Let's see. Got podcasts, playlists, posts. Okay, this is my channel right here. And this right here, Google Groups, it's groups.google.com/G/AskDaveSomething. Ask Dave Ham Radio. Okay, you can see the URL up there. And there are no conversations yet, but we've got a number of people who are already members. Now, this goes along with the network effect in that the more people who are here, the more people will want to use this. But this is a group discussion that you can chat with each other in. Okay, I know a lot of YouTubers have Discord that you're used to using for your favorite YouTube channels and so on, but that is available for you to use. Please do. Like I said, it's free. Google Memberships is also open, so you can join the channel. And there's always, of course, the Super Chats. A great way to help buck up the channel fund, since we are gallivanting. It's gallivanting season here. And we go out to GJ. Well, GJ just up the road here. And I've been asked to present, and that's, I think, already on the thing. I've went through yesterday and made sure that I had paid my membership fees and picked the banquet dinners and all that sort of thing. When we go out to Pacificon, we stay with an old friend of Loretta's from many, many, many years ago, and we always take her to the banquet with us. So she's a vegetarian. They have a vegetarian option, and she'll do that, and I will, Loretta and I will have salmon. Okay, let's see. Next comes from Carl Easterly. Hello. Adds $20 to the chat revenue. Says, love your passion. Have you any wisdom on a water well pump creating lots of RF noise? Specifically, since it's in the ground as it is under the water table. The noise travels up the wires. Okay, the wires are pretty well sealed against water, but they're not sealed against RF. So I'm going to suggest to you that you get some ferrite beads. You can call DX Engineering, because the people at the Talmadge office are all very expert hams. You're not just talking to a salesman who wants to upsell you. You're talking to a ham. And you can tell him the gauge of the wire and the stuff like that, and he can sell you 15 or 20 of these things. You're going to have to disconnect the well. You may, or disconnect the electrical line, but you want to slide these over that line. If you can't do that, there are clamp-ons that you can put them around both lines and even on the ground line, because it's 3 lines going down there. Now, the well casing itself is an excellent ground. However, it fully supports sending up all that noise up there. Don't add a capacitor across there because that will screw up the motor. The way motors go around is they need the magnetic field leading the, the electric field leading the magnetic field. That's a phase difference between the two. And there's a capacitor that's part of the motor that does that. There's another capacitor that really makes that emphasized for starting the motor. And then unless that pump is three-phase, it's weird. You get a kick and a kick and a kick and a kick. You go around on single phase. If you are doing it with three-phase, you get a very steady pressure going around. That's why all the bigger motors are three-phase. But you can do the old ferrite trick with that and do it fairly close to the pump. I think that should probably solve your problem. If not, we'll try something else. You can always talk to the pump people, but they often don't know really how to deal with that. So Carl, good luck with that problem. Thank you so much for throwing a little into the channel revenue. Glenn says potatoes are fermented to make vodka and the alcohol fractionally distilled to concentrate the alcohol in vodka. Yeah, I had the opportunity to visit a local one-person distillery. And the guy did it from a variety of biologic sources because they gave a different flavor. And he always, he didn't sell vodka per se. It was all 100 proof or less. So he would dilute it with different kinds of flavors. And the still he had was just a length of copper pipe about 8 feet long with all kinds of little taps coming out. And he had to keep the thing in a very precise temperature. I think he had a heater around the thing. It was kind of a sleeve heater. And you have to do it just right so the alcohol comes out alcohol and not one of the other distillates. So what he'll sometimes do is take what comes out as alcohol and throw it back into the mash to do it again and go through it. And because the state, of course, licenses commercial distilleries, he has to keep all kinds of records. He let me, since I don't drink, I was the only one in the crowd he trusted, he gave me a glass full of pure alcohol, as pure as he could get it. I had the opportunity to smell it and went, yep, alcohol. And then he takes that and goes through lots of different processes, but he has to keep an exact record of what he distills so he can show this to the state inspectors. And of course, he has to pay a tax on that. You know, and then he was serving it there. He's since gone bust and gone somewhere else. But it was a very, you know, as an engineer, it was an extremely interesting process to show how he did it. He said he'd made alcohol out of grass. I mean, it's just basically a biomass that's heated. I guess you mentioned yeast. And it's an interesting process, one that I've never taken advantage of. So I can't say much about it. Okay, let's see. Chris Goodman. Well, Glenn, thanks for the information. Let's see. Chris Goodman, K0BLU. Hello from St. Cloud, where it's 53 with drizzling rain. I have several box elder maples with symbiotic beetles. Now is the time of year when I spray insecticides to keep them at bay. Good idea. And they're maples. Do you tap them in the spring or whenever the sap's running so you can make maple syrup? WT2D, great channel, thank you. Robert Morris, NFED Half Wave. Yeah. I've got one up right now. The one I have is the one, like I said, open source, made by Guzizu, and it works great. In fact, I just left it up. Now, since it works on 80, 40, skip 60, 80, 40, 30, 20, 17, 15, 12, and 10, I've got my little Zactec Whisper transmitter, and it transmits on all those bands in turn. Let me show you something really cool. I'm going to bring up another, and I'm going to go, let's see, it's Whisper, WSPR net. Okay, and I'm going to go to the map. All the Whisper receivers report. I don't know why this thing is so slow, but it's been very, very slow the past few days, particularly since I've been using screenshots of it for the for this presentation. Well, we may come back to that. I'll leave it up and go back to it live streaming. When that circle stops going around, it'll be time to take a look. Okay, so that's an end-fed half wave. I'm sorry, I was referring to a base station setup. Yeah. You're going to be on a base station. Well, now the use of the term base station is a little different between ham radio and CB. It's actually used a lot more in CB. Base station in ham radio means your home station. This one right here. Okay. And an end-fed half wave is a great way to go. You can get the ARRL kit. It's way less than $100. Not way less, not $50. It's like $80. Maybe it's up to 90 by now. And it comes with the 49-to-1 balun, the little capacitor in there, and 66 feet of wire. Now, if you extend that 66 feet of wire to 132 feet of wire, you may have to swing it around or something like that. It'll be on 80, in addition to 40, 20, 15, and 10. But it brings along for the ride 30, 17, and 12. And that's how I've got that one configured. I've also got the ARRL configured that way. I've done videos with it. I don't know why the ham radio community was so long coming around to an end-fed half wave. If you think about it, and I did a video on this too, a J-pole has a quarter wave matching stub, the part that's double. It's 19 inches long, and it's shorted at one end. Well, if you have a transmission line shorted at one end and it's a quarter wave long, the other end is high impedance. And so they use that to end-fed a half-wave dipole at 2 meters, vertically, of course. You can do the same thing at HF using ladder line, and I've done a video on that, and some other cool things that happen there. Okay, why did that go to, oh, the map. Let's see, we have the map now. Okay, I'm going to go back to screen, and I'm going to pull this up so you can see it. And we'll go, I'm going to go down here. I've got KE0OG. Okay, this right here is bands that hear me. It tells you by the color of the band who hears me. And right now, we're gray line. Okay, it's gray line right now. I'm being heard in Australia, Hawaii, Brazil. This is some, I don't know what it is. I had to get my own Google Maps license to get this thing to appear properly. St. Helena. Okay, there's somebody down there. I don't know who claims those islands. But a bunch of people in Europe, and none of those except this one right here look like gray line, because gray line would follow the gray line. Now, these are the ones in the United States who are hearing me and have heard me in the last hour. Okay? And you can go by band if you go with, well, I'm going to say 80 meters. Now it's going to take that map forever to redraw. Oh, I have to update. And there we go. These are the people hearing me on 80 meters right now. I can come up here and let's do 20 meters. Okay, 20 meters I'm being heard from Europe, South America, Alaska, Canada, and Australia. So it's pretty doggone good. Now the gray line would put me down over here, but there aren't that many hams in that area. But this is with, get it up here where you can see it. There. And I'll zoom in a little bit. There you go. Look at all these people that have heard me in the last hour. Okay, let's go back to live streaming. Now, the thing about it is, I mean, this looks really good. I'm being heard in those areas. That means this would be a good time to try that band to see if you can get into those areas. Now, the Zactec transmitter is 200 milliwatts. That's 0.2 watts, 1/5 of a watt, going out through that end-fed dipole right there and reaching places all over the world. So Whisper is pretty cool stuff. Anyway, let's see. Base station setup. I think an end-fed halfway because it's probably your least expensive way to go. And the ARRL, now you have to do a little drilling into the plastic box. My assistant and I put ours together and we used a drill press to put them in the right place. I would not even attempt to do this with a hand drill. My hand shakes too much. And I am really bad at lining up the drill and all that sort of thing. Hence the drill press, which I have a bench style drill press that has helped me in so many things. Okay. Robert Morris, halfwave. Phil, KA2QIK. Hello, Dave and all Augies from Kalamazoo, Michigan. I love that name. Josh Hayes, best frequency for mountainous areas, HF, VHF, or UHF. It depends where you are in the mountains. If you can see a repeater, use that because it's got a good view around. If you're stuck in a hole, 80 meters, and 40 meters. 40 meters in the daytime, 80 meters at night. Because what happens is it hugs the ground for quite a ways out. And I had a guy, he's since passed away, but he was the guy who lived down at the head end of the Gunnison Tunnel, which brings water over to the Uncompahgre River and irrigates thousands of acres around here. And he was the man who turned the wheel to give the proper amount of water to divert it from the Gunnison through the Gunnison Tunnel into the Uncompahgre. And then the rest of it goes on downstream as the Gunnison, because that's got to irrigate Delta and all that area around there. You get much north, much north of Delta, and it's all BLM land, so there's not much agriculture up there. When you get up into the Grand Valley, it joins with the Colorado. The confluence is very visible from the air. It's a landmark up there. And not so visible from the ground. Anyway, it's interesting to see the two colored rivers going parallel to each other for a while before they really mix. Anyway, he lived in the bottom of that very, very steep canyon. And so I set him up for 80 meters. And we put the 80-meter antenna, it was dipole, down in, fed it in the middle with some of his homemade feed line. I used one of my antenna tuners because he had this weird thing that somebody had loaned him that was from 50 years ago, Matchbox or something like that. I just gave him a modern tuner, and we tuned it up on 80. And he could get out of there just fine. And he participated in morning nets, the weather net, and, you know, stuff like that. He was able to speak to Denver and all that. Salt Lake City is about equidistant. So it was really kind of NVIS, but it was at the bottom of the valley. And so the ground wave crawled up and out of there. Okay, there's a significant ground wave on 80 meters, normally from a vertical antenna. But he did this horizontal antenna. It was amazing how well it worked. So if you're in a really mountainous area and you're kind of between mountains, that's a good place to do it. Now, I want you to do something that I'm going to suggest here and see if I can find mine. This is a protractor. Okay. I want you to set this on something that you're sure is level, because you've used a level to level it. And then I want you to look up there and see how high the mountains really are. We live in the mountains, but the mountains around here, none of them are over 3 degrees above the horizon. It'll fool you. And so I don't have any problem using any kind of antenna I want. That was one of the reasons that we lived here, was because it actually was a good ham radio site. And anyway, that gives you something to do there. Let's see. Oh, okay. So now UHF is almost entirely line of sight. VHF will bend a bit. The radio horizon for VHF and UHF is about 4/3 that of the visual horizon. So that 2 meter will bend down a little bit, and that might be able to help you. Now, FM is always vertically polarized. So you can use a beam antenna, vertically polarized, and you can get these with the beam antenna for the UHF collinear with that, so you'll have 2-band antenna. Or you can get it with it perpendicular to that, which you would use for satellite work, for FM satellites. And it's got a handle on the end of it so you can hold it up. Okay, Henry Casile, hi Dave from Toronto. Robert Morris, radiates more off the perimeter. Yeah. AZP, is 160 and 80 worth putting up an antenna for someone not interested in rag chews? I have never in my life had a contact on 160 meters. The band is absolutely closed during the day. The only time it's really of any good use is in the winter. Now, if you want to get anywhere out of it, if 160 meter antenna, a half wavelength is 80 meters or 232 feet approximately. And if to get optimum radiation off of a dipole, you need to have it up a half a wavelength, 262 feet in the air. I don't know of anyone who can do that. So you will probably end up building a heavily loaded vertical antenna. Like if you've got a tall tree, you get that wire up there as far as you can. Obviously, that's way short of 262 feet. So you have to add a lot of loading. There's an article in a fairly recent QST about that. I think it was the cover story, so you can go back and look at them and pick out which one it was. And 160 is known for DX in the winter at night. Okay, that's about the only time it's good. You get some really good DX. 80 meters, same kind of thing. Okay, an 80 meter antenna that's horizontal, I just don't know of any hams with 128 foot towers. So it'll be an NVIS antenna, and that's not how you get DX. Plus, 80 meters is mostly nets anyway. So what I would put up is 40 meter. Like I said, you can go to the league, buy their end-fed half-wave kit, 40 through 10, and stick that up. It's less than $100, and it will give you a good account of itself on those bands. And now 17, I've noticed, is really 12 has been open quite a bit recently. So pays your money, takes your choice. I do not recommend spending $800 on a fancy all-band vertical. First of all, it's only going to cover a small part of 80 meters. Second, although it will cover all of the bands, excluding 60, none of them cover 60, which is okay by me. I've never had a QSO on 60 anyway. It's only 5 channels, and there's lots of rules and so on. Anyway, it'll go 40 to 10, catch all the bands in between, and you're going to pay $600 to $800 for that antenna. And you know what? Or the two kinds you can get, the kind that are ground mounted and have radials, although you can mount it in the air and put tuned radials on it. Or you can get the kind that doesn't need radials, because it's actually in disguise and then fed half wave. Stick it up about 10 feet off the ground. You don't want that thing on the ground. Get it up about 10 feet off the ground, which means you're going to need to guide at the feed point and guide about halfway up. That $800 antenna is no better than a dipole. Okay? Very important to note. These vertical antennas are unity gain antennas. You're not getting any extra gain out of a vertical. So don't pay $600 or $800 for a fancy vertical that takes you 3 days to put together and 4 days to tune. Just hang a dipole. Dipoles don't need to be straight. They can be at weird angles. You can go halfway down and twist it this way. I've done modeling on that. They're very good. Yeah, they're very flexible. 40 meter dipole is 66 feet long, total length of the wire. If your yard is only 50 feet wide, put your poles up and then hang the ends down. It works best if they're wood poles. Okay. Or fiberglass or whatever. So, yes, do the dipole. It's inexpensive. It's just as good as those unity gain $800 antennas. Okay? You don't get gain until you start doing something like a hex beam or Yagi or cubical quad or something like that. A lot of people build cubical quads themselves, but hope there's no wind there. It'll bring them down in a hurry. Okay. So there, yeah, I think I answered your question. Techno City, can an antenna be made with a liquid like water? No, water actually is an insulator. Salt water is very conductive. I'm talking seawater, not just brackish water, seawater or brine. Although brine will dig into anything you put into it because it's even more concentrated than seawater. If you graduated from Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, You can maybe get a bunch of salt water up there and feed that in the middle somehow, make it levitate by itself. Yes, that will work as a very good antenna. If you want to put up plastic pipe and fill it with seawater, yeah, that'll work too. Stick a wire from the coax into each. I've never heard of anybody trying that. But can it be made to work? Yes. Mercury is liquid at room temperatures. It is it's a very good conductor, okay? The best conductor is silver. That's too expensive, so everybody uses copper instead. In fact, copper is the baseline for conductivity. The conductivity of pure copper is 1. Silver is about 1.06. But they go down from there. Stainless steel is about 0.3, which is interesting because people like Wolf River coils and so on, they talk about how their coils are stainless steel. Wow. So I measured it. I have a Wolf River coil. It's called Take It Along antenna. And it works great, but when you pull the thing down to resonance at 80 meters, I measured the resistance 5 ohms. You're throwing in 5 ohms of resistive resistance. It's not radiation resistance. It's resistive heat loss resistance, okay? For about the 20 meter point, there was very little loss because it's right up at the top. But beware stainless steel coils because stainless steel is not that good a conductor. Milk is getting warm. Okay, let's see. Larry Fields from Manila. Oh dear. Did we just lose the link? There, okay, I think it came back. We lost the link there for, YouTube lost the link there for a while. Okay, oh, there's a lot of questions here. I don't know if I can get to them all. Let's see, let me get back where we were. We were at Kalamazoo. Larry Fields, who's in Manila, says, good morning. I used to work in a job that made wood alcohol. It made me laugh at coworkers who talked about the fumes. Yeah, the fumes would be intoxicating. K3DHJ, checking in. Larry Fields, my mom used to have many $2 bills. Used to be a CBer who used his name as $2 bill. Larry Fields, and it says his brother got hacked before he passed. It is so frustrating. Ben Hur, yeah, thanks. And Robert Morris. Ben, YW, you're welcome. Okay, incidentally, the infrared half wave using a quarter wave vertically oriented parasitic director can work very well as a directional vertical parasitic array. Yeah, you can make gain antennas out of multiple verticals. The most common is 4 of them. And most commonly you use a simple phasing network and you get 90 degrees that way, 90 degrees that way in each. You've got 4 basic directions and at the edges they overlap. About like a hex beam. Okay? Now if you have more than that, you can get more directional, like 6 or 10. Put them in a circle. Now you're going to have to come up with phasing networks or things that can adjust the phasing, because what you've got is a phased array antenna, and yes, it will have significant gain. Okay, and you can use it as a direction finding antenna by pointing it the other way and getting it in one of the nulls. You can use a text beam for that too. But okay, Robert Morris, I use Beverages, one of 4 single-wire Beverages, one in the Southwest Beverages, routed about 6 feet above my well house, nice and quiet, no RFI. Beverages is an antenna, it's a receiving antenna. Now, it's a lousy receiving antenna. However, it's an even lousier noise receiving antenna. So all you do is put it through your preamp, crank it up, and you get quieter signals on 160 and 80 meters. Now they have to be about 3 wavelengths long, and they have to be terminated in their characteristic impedance, which I think is kind of close to about 800 ohms, in order for it to be unidirectionally. Otherwise it's doubly directional. Same with the rhombic. Oh man, if you've got 20 acres and you have access to some telephone poles, put up a rhombic. Oh wow. Then you've got a serious antenna, but good luck rotating it because it takes up about 3 acres. So you build multiple rhombics to go in different direction. The takeoff angle, according to my modeling, is almost like 1 degree. Very, very, very low takeoff angle. There are still shortwave stations that use them to get there, because it's much, much less expensive than a great big array. But you've got a lot of telephone poles to plant. And these should not be your 20-foot telephone poles. They should be your 50-foot above the ground telephone poles. And then you're going to have to either hire a huge vertical lift, or one of those that has the big long arm and then a couple tons of steel behind you to balance that so you can get up there and string the wires. Okay. There's a guy, W6AM, long dead. He was quite the pioneer in the use of rhombics. That was back in the days of AM. And there are persistent rumors from people who knew him, and I met some of those, that he did not necessarily limit himself to the 1,000 watts maximum input in those days. More like 2K, 5K. But boy, he was the DXer. By the way, rhombics, Beverages, open V's, and so on are not a derivative of a dipole. Now I say almost antennas are because these days most antennas are. But these others are called wave antennas. And that Beverage or the rhombic or others are inherently multiband antennas, as long as the rhombic covers like 3 wavelengths. And of course, you go to a higher frequency, you get more wavelengths. But they do work. You don't see them now because of the sheer amount of land they take. So, okay, let's see. June, do you like Hustler 4 or 5 BTV verticals? I've never used one, never tested one, but they're popular. They're popular, okay. Larry Fields went to a party where a guy had moonshine, very nasty. Yeah, if you, it's an Americanism, moonshiner. It means the same thing as a bootlegger. When my dad was young, he was with his mother, who had a boyfriend who was a bootlegger. And he remembers more than once being awakened in the middle of the night, shoved into the back seat of the car, and off down the road they went. Because the feds were all over these people. Interesting life my dad had. Okay, moonshine, very nasty. Yeah, well, you know, the reason you pay so much money for the high quality alcohol is because it takes a lot of money to make high quality alcohol. Moonshine is, God, you don't know what's in there. Chris Goodman, box elder maples do not produce maple syrup. Too bad. Sugar maples and black maples make good maple syrup. Thank you for the information. Jeff Kahn 1, my little church had an organ with huge, huge pipes up front on the other side of the altar. It was majestic. Yeah, there's a couple organ. I like listening to the organists on here. Being sort of an organist, I can play some hymns. And I played for the congregation many times. And then I was trained by an organist who was trained under one of the tabernacle organists who, and I have had a chance to play the tabernacle organ. I got 2 minutes on it, on a tour. And I played one verse of Come, Come Ye Saints, which is big. And then another verse of Come Follow Me. In the old hymn book, that's pages 13, or hymn numbers 13 and 14. Not page numbers, hymn numbers. Anyway, that's very soft and with strings and stuff like that. Very nice. Anyway, he taught me all his tricks for how to encourage a congregation to sing. And my problem is I've never been a good pianist. So learning the organ, all organ technique assumes that you're a fairly competent pianist to begin with. And then you're taught the difference between a piano and an organ, and they are very different instruments. A piano is a string instrument, an organ is a wind instrument. But I ought to make more about these other guys. Maybe some of you guys would like to listen to these too. There's one guy in England, one guy in Germany, and they're young, very young, in their 20s, just outstanding organists. June, if I take the internet to transmit, it's not ham radio personally, why not just a talk app? Well, yeah, you can do that, but there are some people who like to marry the internet with ham radio. And some people really like that. You know, ham radio really is a collection of hobbies. And, you know, some people are into DXing, some rag chewing, others just talking with their friends on 80 meters. Others just like to get on the local repeater, or they like to do public service, or, you know, we just, the week after Labor Day, there's going to be which will be this coming Saturday, I think, the big Imogene Pass run. And our club has always provided the links at each station. So because it's way up in the mountain, I mean way up in the mountains. The peak is over 13,000 feet, and that's a drivable road. And yes, I've had my motorcycle over it many times. It was a wonderful evening ride. After work, I just go over Imogene. I might come back that way, or I might just come down into Telluride and come back the regular way. But oh, a lot of stories about that. Okay, if you use DMR on a local repeater and it's just repeated by the repeater, the internet's not involved. But if you get into any of the talk groups, which are like chat groups, which are like rooms, which are like party lines, whatever, then the internet is involved. Now, one of the ways that can help with public service is if you're here in a disaster area with your UHF equipment, and there's a repeater that happens to be working, a DMR repeater that's working, you can provide the bridge between the locals who need communications out and the internet. The internet as a whole is never down, never has been down since it was invented. It was invented specifically for communications in situations where large portions of the network would fail. But the internet as a whole doesn't. Pieces of it do, but not the whole thing. So anyway, that's up to you what you want to do. JeffCon1, what is the best way to retransmit the ARRL audio news podcast? Some people put it on their club repeaters, and they do it, and you can do the same thing with space shuttle audio. The thing about that is that the way they're built, if there is traffic for the thing, it will come over on top of it. In other words, that is just a backup. And I'm not sure the ARRL wants its stuff retransmitted. You'll have to ask them, and I would do that. Okay, it is not at all using the internet to transmit. Well, it does on the other end. If, for example, you're talking to a person, say in Germany, and you're using your local hotspot and they're using the repeater, the link between them is internet. That is internet. June 6 BTV, yeah. Why are amplifiers so expensive? Because, and I will tell you why. The why is that they have a very small market. What percentage of hams have amplifiers? I have a 500 watt amplifier that basically fell in my lap. I had an old ham who had long given up ham radio. He had remarried, and he had this Ameritron 500M ALS, whatever it is. And he called me up one day and says, Dave, I've got this thing. Do you want it? I says, well, how much do you want for it? Oh, a couple $100. I says, I'll be right over. And I went over and got that thing, $200. Cost me more than that for the power supply. About $270 for the power supply. My wife gave that to me for my birthday. So I have a 500 watt amp that I hardly ever use, but I've got it. Use that with the hex beam? Great. But amps are expensive because the market for them is so small. Also, we are in the middle of the transition for high power amplifiers between tubes and transistors. Obviously, it will at some point end up all transistors. But still, it is less expensive by like 25% to get a tube amplifier. And if you treat it well and don't ruin the tubes, it'll last for years. And yes, you can still get the tubes for them. Interestingly, iMac, the tube company that make these big giant things for broadcasting, they are got out of the ham radio market, and they were considered the premier tubes. And a lot of amplifiers were built around iMac tubes. So now the tubes come from Bulgaria, and there are a couple places in the United States that are kind of putting their finger in the water to test the temperature to start making tubes again, because tubes are very, very popular for guitar amps. You will not find an electric guitarist who likes transistor equipment. You won't find one. The reason for that is if you use Class AB, which most of them do, or just Class B, they distort. Well, we were all raised with AM radios that, though they sounded great, distorted. with FM radios that had tubes that distorted. Our ears are used to that distortion, and that's what we consider high quality audio. Transistor amps don't do that. And I remember the very, very first time I heard a CD being played on all transistor equipment with top of the line speakers. Everything was top of the line. And I sat there and I finally said, it sounds flat. There's no depth. Well, the reason is because there was no distortion. And it's that distortion that gives you that sense of depth. And so people more and more and more are wanting tubes for their guitar amps and all of that type of stuff. And of course, the big broadcast stations all use tubes. They have to. There's no transistor that can handle 100,000 watts. So it's tube, either a traveling wave tube or some big, huge, humongous thing where tubes are paralleled and you do AB1 or something like that to get a reasonably linear signal out. But that's why people like tubes. They sound better. I don't know about that. My amplifier here is transistor, one of the earliest all-transistor amps. Now, it's fed with 12 volts, which means big cables. The newer transistor-style amps usually come with the power supply because they're running at 50 or 75 volts. There's stuff in there you don't want to touch. It's dangerous. 30 volts is DC, is about the max that you should ever touch, and you don't want to do it that high deliberately. 12 volts, yeah. I still touch 9-volt batteries to my tongue to see if they've got any charge left in them. That's an old habit. Okay, amplifiers are so expensive because there's not a very big market for them. And I figure, okay, there's about 150,000 members of the league. So I'm figuring 200,000 active hams, most. Of those, probably 10% or less have serious RF amplifiers. So you're down to 20,000 total market. And most of those people already have one. They're not going to get a new one unless the old one blows up or they want more features or whatever. More bands, the work bands. 30 meters is limited to, I think, 150 watts or something. I have to check that. Check it later. There are many, many people who want to sell amplifiers. And so you've really got market fragmentation for a very small market. It's not like there's one person who makes the amps. Not anymore. So you get a lot of people out there. All the new amplifiers are a transistor. However, ACOM, which makes a very good series of amplifiers, some of them are tube. Okay, so if you get a tube amplifier, get one of the new ones so it has the proper protective equipment to keep you from screwing that tube over. The way you screw a tube over is to get the plate too hot. And then it doesn't work right. Because remember, the plate's supposed to be fairly cool relative to the cathode to get that one-way direction of electrons. Let's see. Glenn says, thanks for all you do for us amateurs. Have a great September. You can still grab that little dollar bill down at the bottom there and send more for the channel revenue if you would like. A lot of power is going on inside. Doing that safely is costly. Doing it safely while also competently amplifying RF doubly so. Yeah, they're hard to make, but they've been made. I mean, the big problems have been solved. So FCC approval is required for type acceptance. Larry Fields, they used to say that SSB was not ham radio too, but for me, if internet goes down, I can still use Wires X, which is going to go over ham radio, but let's see. Wires X is part of their system fusion, and it's an analog part. James, KI5OEB, has got quite a few here. Amplifiers are expensive due to engineering costs and then limited production. Yeah, right. Might make the Rybakov really long. James has an 80-meter inverted L. Yes, you can do that, certainly. Now, another thing you can do is a long wire. If you can string up a long wire that's more than 3 wavelengths long, that's the definition of a long wire, by the way. More than 2 to 3 wavelengths long. And then you put the tuner right at the feed point so that there's no coax in between the tuner and the antenna. It can work really great. Absolutely. What about the new 630 band and the 2200 band? It's on the new ARRL band plan. Yeah, you need to get some kind of permission to get on there. It's not hard to get. But then the problem again becomes antennas. You are allowed 1 watt effective radiated power. And when you make a reasonable antenna that you can actually make, you may put 1,000 watts into it, and 999 watts is converted to heat. And 1 watt goes out over the air. That's why it's limited to 1 watt. Okay. Let's see. Yep, HF9V is outrageously expensive. I had one. They're a stinker to tune on 30 meters. There was an add-on, 30 meters. Maybe a 71-foot inverted V with a 12-meter center mast would tune 8 meters pretty easily. 80 meters. Yeah, you can tune it. I think you'd want a longer antenna. Really would. End-fed random wire. 9 to 1. If you are feeding from ladder line into an antenna, it depends on what the impedance is at that frequency at the point you feed it. And there's 4 to 1s and 9 to 1s, which are common. The 49 to 1 is most common for end-fed. Some people use 64 to 1. Turn the dipole vertically and decouple the feed line. Yeah, put some ferrite beads in there. Let's see. I appreciate your... Okay, there's... It got lost here. Good morning from the Japanese islands, Robert Morris. Good morning. Okay, we've got a lot of things here. And I would swap my 7600 for your DX10. 7600 or 7610? I had a 7610 that was loaned to me for about 6 months. Oh, what a nice machine. Nice machine. Now, the FTDX10 has got roofing filters in it, which the FT710 does not, nor does the ICOM 7300. But I believe the 7610 does. I don't know. Let's see. No mods. We like that distortion. Yes, we do. We love the sound of it. Never used the 7600 set field day. Okay. I'm only GMRS, was an old ham from 91. Going to read GMRS as WSGH504. My GMRS call sign is WSGQ881. And I got that because I was sent a GMRS repeater to review. Okay, we're getting down to the bottom. Larry Fields, my grandson wants to try Class D, but his age is 10. It was in production 12 years ago, acquired it from a site. Yeah, QSL, still sold when the 7300 came out. 3 lambda is very long. Yes, it is. Well, it depends on what band. 10 meters, it's not very long. 72's June ICOM 746 HF. 146 to 10, 6 meter and 2 meter. The 746, the classic ICOM was the ICOM 756. And it was the kind of radio that people would take on DX positions. It's sort of like the pinnacle of super heterodyne design. Okay, 73 checking out. Screenshot. Okay, I have an ICOM 7600 and it's great. Yeah, I've been offered, there's a 77 something, I've been offered to have it for 6 months, and I would love to, but I need to make videos with this thing here, because this is the reference station. So I'm really torn on what to do. Okay, anyway, we're way past end time. So I'm going to say that I love you guys all. I wish you all the best. Please keep communicating. There's something I'm looking for. One, people who are willing to be interviewed as part of one of my videos. Not very long. I've got one up there already. About your ham radio experience. What got you into ham radio? Why are you still a ham? What's your favorite? You know, just this kind of thing. Believe me, a lot of people are very interested in that because they can see themselves in you. Okay, the other thing I'm looking for is station pictures. And send it to me with a little write-up so we can use it during these live streams to show the pictures to people so people can see what other people are doing. That's all. It doesn't have to be fancy at all. And, you know, the simplest are sometimes the best. My ham station consists of the 7300. Now up here I have an, let's see, any tone, 2 meter, 70 centimeter, and 1.25 meter radio, but it's not connected. And over here I have the controller for the step-IR antenna. Above it a watt meter, above that the little Zactec. And then over here I have the power supply for the amp, and the amp is sitting down below here. All I have to do is flip a single switch, and well, 2 switches. I got to turn the power supply on. Right now I am testing the SDR play, and I can't read it sideways. It's their new server type radio, and I've got a little bit more testing on it, and I'll have a video on it. It's an excellent radio. It is designed to be a receiver that people can come into over the internet. Now the problem, I don't know that my ISPs want me to be serving anything, but I'll do it for testing. Okay, 7760, that's the one that they were going to loan me. That sounds like a really nice radio. Now, that FTDX 3000 I've got sitting right up there is the radio I had before I developed the reference station. And it is by far the very best receiver I have ever owned. It is an amazing receiver. Quiet, beautiful. The epitome of super heterodyne design. And then they start the SDR part when you're down in like around 50 kilohertz or something like that. That's where they pick that up. And I can't remember if it has a waterfall or not. Anyway, it's a very nice radio. I love the waterfall on this. I can feed the RF amplifier output, receive RF amplifier output into an SDR radio directly and get a huge waterfall on the screen. It's just amazing. And it does not have to be tuned to the same frequency as this. Okay, so to everybody, yes, thoughts on the 7300 Mark 10? That is ICOM's reaction to the FT710. Okay, that's why it's there. I talked to the head marketer for ICOM at Dayton. He said, why would we modify it? We're sold over 100,000 of them. And I think I may have helped that because it's been my reference station for close to 10 years. And then ICOM, or Yaesu's come out with this new. So what they did was they took the basic ICOM radio and gussied it up with a couple extra features. And I think that they had to sell out most of the inventory of the 7300. Nobody's going to buy a 7300 right now. They want the 7300 Mark II. And I wouldn't either. I'd wait for the Mark II. Or get the Yaesu. I've been a Yaesu guy all my ham life. This foray into ICOM is new for me. But I really like that radio. I love it. Okay, so until we next meet, 73. Okay, end stream. Now I've got 41 after 8. And what is this thing?